Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth exploration vessel Curiosity had seen many strange things during her decade of deep space exploration, but nothing quite prepared her for the sight that now filled her bridge's main viewport. The vessel before them looked like what would happen if a master jeweler had decided to build a spaceship, all gleaming crystalline surfaces and impossibly perfect geometric patterns that seemed to catch and reflect every speck of starlight. "Well," she said, maintaining her professional composure despite the urge to laugh, "I guess someone out here really likes their bling." Her crew wasn't quite as successful at holding back their amusement. Lieutenant Rodriguez at Tactical actually snorted, quickly trying to disguise it as a cough, while Communications Officer Park bit her lip so hard it nearly bled. The massive crystalline vessel had appeared suddenly at the edge of their sensor range, just as the Curiosity and its sister ships were mapping an unexplored sector of space. Initial scans showed technology far beyond anything humanity had yet achieved, but there was something almost comically ostentatious about its design. "Ma'am," Park called out, her voice tight with suppressed laughter, "we're receiving a transmission. They're using some kind of filter that makes their image sparkle. Put it on screen," Chen ordered, squaring her shoulders. "And everyone, please try to maintain proper diplomatic protocol. We don't want our first contact with an advanced civilization to be remembered as the time we couldn't stop giggling." The view screen flickered to life, revealing what appeared to be the bridge of the alien vessel. The being centered in the image might have been imposing, with its tall, crystalline-looking form and elaborate ceremonial armor, if not for the fact that everything, including the alien itself, was indeed covered in a layer of digital sparkles that would have made a children's video producer proud. "Attention primitive vessels," the alien announced in a voice that somehow managed to both boom and tinkle at the same time. "I am Supreme Commander Zixtal of the Crystalline Concordat. You have entered space claimed by our eternal empire, which has ruled the stars for 10,000 cycles." Chen dug her nails into her palms, fighting to maintain her composure. The alien's serious demeanor combined with the sparkle filter was almost too much to bear. "Greetings, Supreme Commander," she managed. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth exploration vessel Curiosity. We come in peace and apologize for any territorial transgression. We are an exploratory mission from Earth." "Your apology is noted but insufficient," Zixtal declared, the sparkles intensifying with each word. "You will submit to immediate scanning and classification. Resistance will result in—" "Why are your facial muscles contorting in that manner?" Chen realized she was losing the battle against her smile. "My apologies, Supreme Commander. It's just, is the visual enhancement effect part of your standard communication protocol?" "Of course," Zixtal replied, seeming puzzled. "The sparkle of authority is a sacred tradition dating back to the founding of our empire. It represents the crystalline purity of our—" "Why are more of your crew making those strange sounds?" Several bridge officers were now openly chuckling, trying desperately to hide behind their consoles. Chen knew she had to salvage the situation somehow. "Supreme Commander, please understand that in our culture, such visual effects have very different associations. We mean no disrespect." "Different associations." The alien's crystalline features shifted in what might have been a frown. "Explain." "Well," Chen said carefully, "in our entertainment media, such effects are often used in programming intended for very young children, or in what we call social media filters for amusing self-expression." There was a long pause as Zixtal processed this information. The sparkles seemed to dim slightly. "Are you suggesting," the commander said slowly, "that our sacred Imperial communications protocol reminds you of juvenile entertainment? Cultural differences can be fascinating," Chen offered diplomatically, while silently praying this wouldn't start an interstellar incident. "Perhaps we could." She was interrupted by a new transmission cutting across their channel. Another crystalline ship had arrived, its commander appearing on a split screen, complete with sparkle filter and what appeared to be floating heart emojis. That did it. The entire bridge crew lost their battle with composure, dissolving into helpless laughter. Even Chen couldn't hold back anymore, tears streaming down her face as she tried to apologize between gasps for air. What happened next would change the course of human-alien relations forever, because instead of responding with offense or anger, Zixtal did something unprecedented in the 10,000-cycle history of the crystalline concordat. The Supreme Commander began to laugh too. The sound was strange, like wind chimes in a thunderstorm, but unmistakable. By the sacred facets, Zixtal managed between chiming laughs. We do look ridiculous, don't we? As the laughter of both species mingled across the light years, the rigid protocols of first contact dissolved into something far more genuine. Perhaps, Chen thought as she wiped tears from her eyes, this was the real universal language, not mathematics or physics, but the shared ability to laugh at oneself. The crystalline concordat would never be quite the same after that day. And as for humanity's reputation in the greater galaxy, well, let's just say that having a sense of humor about oneself became a highly valued diplomatic skill. In the weeks following the unprecedented first contact, the Curiosity and its sister ships found themselves docked at the crystalline concordat's nearest outpost, a sprawling space station that looked like a geometric snowflake caught in eternal starlight. Captain Chen sat in what the concordat called a harmony chamber, though her crew had privately dubbed it the disco room, due to its constantly shifting crystalline surfaces. Across from her, Supreme Commander Zixtal was attempting to maintain the traditional gravitas expected of their position, while briefing her on the current galactic political situation. The effect was somewhat undermined by the fact that their station's AI kept automatically applying what humans would recognize as social media filters to all official communications. As you can see, Zixtal explained as their image briefly sprouted digital cat ears, the situation with the Void Collective is becoming, by the sacred facets, how do I turn this one off? Chen bit her tongue, but her eyes sparkled with amusement. The Concordat's initial embarrassment over their ceremonial communications protocols had led to some attempting to modify their systems. The results had been unpredictable. Perhaps we could continue this discussion in person, she suggested kindly. My crew has been fully cleared by your medical protocols. Agreed, Zixtal said with obvious relief as the cat ears finally disappeared. Though I must warn you, Captain, not all members of the Concordat share my evolved perspective on diplomatic protocols. The warning proved prescient. As they walked through the station's crystalline corridors, they encountered a group of Concordat elders, ancient beings whose crystalline forms had grown so complex they resembled walking chandeliers. The elders took one look at the human delegation and their facets darkened with disapproval. Supreme Commander, the lead elder chimed in tones that somehow managed to sound both melodious and disapproving. You continue to indulge these primitives and their irreverent behavior. Need I remind you of the sacred protocols of interaction? Before Zixtal could respond, Lieutenant Rodriguez, who had been added to the diplomatic team for his cynoanthropology expertise, sneezed. The sound echoed through the crystalline chamber, causing several of the elders to vibrate in shock. My deepest apologies, Rodriguez said quickly, reaching for a tissue. Crystal dust allergy. The elders' disapproval deepened visibly, but then something extraordinary happened. A young Concordat member, barely more than a crystalline sapling, began emanating a sound that could only be described as giggles. Elder Voxel, the young one chimed, you're resonating at the exact frequency of what humans call a wind chime. No wonder they find our protocols amusing. We must sound like a garden orchestra to them. The elder's facets flushed deep purple with indignation, but the observation had already spread. Other younger Concordat members began to titter, their crystalline forms tinkling with suppressed mirth. Order, the elder demanded, but their authoritative resonance was somewhat undermined by a passing maintenance drone that chose that moment to malfunction, spraying them with cleaning solution that made their already sparkly form positively dazzle. This time, It wasn't just the humans and young Concordat members who laughed. Even some of the other elders' facets twitched with barely contained amusement. Perhaps, Zixtel suggested diplomatically, their own crystalline form shimmering with mirth. It is time we discussed updating certain protocols. After all, the universe seems to have a sense of humor about these things. Later, in a more private setting, Chen found herself sharing what humans would call a drink with Zixtel, though the Supreme Commander's beverage appeared to be some sort of liquid crystal that chimed musically when sipped. You know, Zixtel mused, for 10,000 cycles, our empire has based its diplomatic approach on inspiring awe, and let us be honest, fear. Yet in just a few weeks, your species has managed to completely upend our most sacred traditions simply by showing us how to laugh at ourselves. Chen smiled. Sometimes the best way to deal with the vastness of space is to not take ourselves too seriously. Though I have to admit, I never expected my first major diplomatic achievement to involve sparkle filters and sneezing. That's precisely why your species is so fascinating, Zixtel replied. You find humor in the unexpected, joy in the imperfect. Do you know that some of our younger members are now deliberately deactivating their gravitas protocols? They say it helps them think more clearly. Change isn't always easy, Chen acknowledged, thinking of the elders' reactions, especially for a civilization as ancient as yours. No, Zixtel agreed, their crystalline form catching the starlight in a way that, for once, seemed natural rather than artificial. But perhaps it is necessary. The galaxy is changing, Captain. There are threats emerging that cannot be faced with rigid protocols and traditional thinking alone. Chen leaned forward, her expression growing serious. What kind of threats? Before Zixtel could answer, an alarm resonated through the station, a deep, harmonious tone that somehow conveyed urgent danger. The Supreme Commander's form darkened with concern. It seems, they said grimly, you're about to find out. The alarm's resonance had barely faded when the station's holographic displays burst to life, showing a sight that made even the crystalline being's facets pale. A swarm of ships was emerging from what appeared to be tiers in space itself, vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, their hulls rippling like oil on water. The Void Collective. Zixtel's voice had lost all trace of its earlier warmth. They're earlier than our projections suggested. Captain Chen watched as the dark ships approached, their formation unnervingly organic. I take it these are the threats you were about to mention. They emerged from the galactic core 2 cycles ago, Zixtel explained, their crystalline form dimming with concern. They consume energy, all forms of it. Light, heat, even the bioelectric fields of living beings. We've lost 3 outposts already. The station's tactical display updated, showing the void ship's trajectory. They were heading straight for the station's primary power core. Supreme Commander, Elder Voxel's voice chimed with panic. Our standard protocols dictate immediate evacuation and self-destruction of the station to deny them its resources. Chen studied the tactical display, an idea forming. Your protocols might not be necessary. Those ships, they absorb energy, you said. All forms of it. Yes, Zixtel confirmed. Our weapons are useless. Energy beams are absorbed, physical projectiles are disintegrated, and our crystalline resonance attacks simply fuel them. A smile spread across Chen's face, the kind of smile that humans throughout history had worn just before doing something either brilliant or catastrophically stupid. What about overfeeding them? The Concordat members stared at her with their faceted eyes. Overfeeding? Zixtel asked. Lieutenant Rodriguez, Chen called out, remember that issue we had with the station's cleaning drones? The one that made the elders sparkle. Rodriguez's eyes widened with understanding. The maintenance system overload. But Captain, that was just a malfunction in the drones. Perfect, Chen interrupted. How quickly can you replicate that malfunction across the entire station? And this time, make it bigger. Much bigger. Understanding dawned in Zixtel's crystalline features. You want to create a feedback loop in our maintenance systems, but the energy surge would be massive. Chen finished. Exactly. Your station's systems are designed to channel and amplify energy, right? So let's give these energy eaters a feast they won't forget. The younger Concordat members began to chime with nervous laughter as they grasped the plan's beautiful absurdity. Even some of the elders' facets twinkled with reluctant appreciation. It's completely against all protocols, Elder Voxel protested, but their tone held a note of intrigue. That's rather the point, Chen replied. From what we've seen, your protocols are perfect for maintaining order in peacetime. But sometimes chaos is exactly what you need. The next 20 minutes were a blur of activity as humans and Concordat members worked together to deliberately sabotage their own systems in the most spectacular way possible. Rodriguez, working with a young Concordat engineer, reprogrammed the maintenance drones to pump excess energy through the station's crystalline structure. The elders, despite their protests, proved invaluable in calculating the precise resonance frequencies needed to create maximum energy discharge. As the void ships drew closer, the station began to hum. Every crystalline surface vibrated with building power, creating a cacophony of tones that would have put any wind chime factory to shame. Energy levels at 200% of maximum, Rodriguez reported, his voice tense but excited. 300%, 400. The station was now glowing so brightly it looked like a small sun. The void ships, sensing the energy buildup, accelerated toward them like moths to a flame. They're taking the bait, Chen observed. Everyone brace for impact. And maybe close your eyes. The lead void ship made contact with the station's outer field just as the energy levels peaked. What happened next would be talked about in both human and Concordat space for generations to come. The station exploded, not with destruction, but with light. Every crystal, every surface, every particle of excess energy burst outward in a dazzling display that would have made a supernova look subtle. The void ships, programmed to absorb energy, tried to consume it all. It was like watching a snake try to swallow an elephant. The first ship's hull began to ripple more violently, then crack. The others, linked in their swarm-like formation, suffered the same fate as the energy overload cascaded through their network. Within seconds, the mighty void fleet had been reduced to drifting debris, their energy-absorbing systems completely overloaded. In the silence that followed, broken only by the musical tinkling of cooling crystal, Elder Vauxhall was the first to speak. That, they chimed in tones of disbelief, was the most undignified, protocol-breaking, absolutely brilliant defense I have ever witnessed. Chen looked around the room. At her human crew members sporting grins of relief, at the young Concordat members literally vibrating with excitement, at the elders trying to maintain their dignity while glowing like disco balls from the energy residue. Sometimes, she said, the best defense is a good party. The resulting laughter, human and crystalline combined, created a harmony that seemed to chase away the last shadows of the void ships. But as the celebration continued, Chen caught Sixtel's eye. They both knew this was only the first encounter. The Void Collective would be back, and next time they would be prepared for such tactics. But that was a problem for another day. Right now, they had a victory to celebrate, and Chen had a feeling the crystalline Concordat was about to discover that humans knew how to throw one hell of a party. In the aftermath of the station's unconventional defense, the crystalline Concordat's war room had undergone some equally unconventional modifications. The traditionally austere chamber now featured a peculiar mix of human and Concordat technology, including what appeared to be a terrestrial disco ball, installed at Lieutenant Rodriguez's insistence as a tactical demonstration device. Captain Chen stood before a holographic display showing the known territory of the Void Collective, her expression thoughtful. Around her, humans and crystalline beings worked side by side, their earlier awkwardness replaced by an easy familiarity born of shared victory and purpose. Their ships are adapting, Zixtal observed, gesturing to the latest battle reports. The swarm that attacked the Centauri outpost was resistant to energy overload tactics. They would be. Chen nodded. The Void Collective seems to operate like a neural network. Each defeat teaches the whole. We need to be more unpredictable. A young Concordat tactical officer named Lixtel chimed in excitement. What if we use that against them? Their need to absorb and learn from everything they encounter. Chen raised an eyebrow. Go on. Well, Lixtel's crystalline form sparkled with enthusiasm. Humans have this concept called trolling, which Lieutenant Rodriguez was explaining to me. What if we gave the collective's neural network some bad data to process? Rodriguez, who had been tinkering with communication equipment nearby, looked up with a grin. Are you suggesting we basically post spam in their neural network? The Void Collective adapts by absorbing and analyzing patterns, Lixtel explained, their facets gleaming. But what if those patterns were nonsensical? Like trying to teach an eye using corrupted data. Elder Voxel, who had become surprisingly supportive of human-inspired innovations since the station battle, hummed thoughtfully. It would violate at least 15 protocols about proper military engagement. Exactly, Chen smiled. Which means they won't expect it. The next few days saw the strangest military preparation in either species' history. Human communications experts worked with Concordat engineers to create what they called the chaos broadcast, a signal that combined human internet memes, corrupted crystalline resonance patterns, and what Rodriguez insisted on calling weapon-grade dad jokes. The station's maintenance drones were reprogrammed to execute random dance patterns while performing their duties, creating unpredictable energy signatures. Young Concordat members, thoroughly embracing human concepts of pranking, began developing crystalline structures that would resonate at frequencies scientifically calculated to be as annoying as possible. Even the elders contributed, though they insisted their suggestions for deliberately incorrect historical records and mathematical proofs that didn't quite add up were purely tactical considerations. When the next Void Collective fleet appeared, they faced not a military formation, but what appeared to be an interstellar rave. The station's external crystals pulsed with randomized light patterns while broadcasting a mix of human pop music and Concordat harmonic sequences played backwards. Maintenance drones performed synchronized swimming patterns in space, their energy signatures deliberately irregular. The void ships paused, their usual swift attack formation faltering as they tried to analyze the chaos before them. That's when Phase 2 began. Now, Chen ordered, hit them with the special package. Rodriguez activated what they had dubbed the Confusion Cannon, a modified communications array that began broadcasting directly into the Void Collective's neural network. The transmission contained everything from paradoxical mathematical equations to recursive memes to fragments of human comedy routines translated into Concordat resonance patterns and back again multiple times. The effect on the void ships was immediate and spectacular. Their formation broke apart as their shared neural network struggled to process the deliberately corrupted data. Some ships began moving in circles, others started broadcasting cat videos into space, somehow having extracted and misinterpreted that particular element of human culture from the chaos stream. It's working. Lixtel chimed excitedly. Their adaptive algorithms are caught in a recursive loop trying to find patterns in our randomness. And now for the finishing touch, Chen nodded to Elder Voxel, who activated their modified resonance chamber. The resulting broadcast was the audio equivalent of a logic bomb, a crystalline harmony that managed to be simultaneously perfectly ordered and completely chaotic, created by running Concordat musical protocols through human jazz improvisation algorithms. The void ships' hulls began to ripple erratically as their systems tried to adapt to something that defied adaptation. One by one, they began to drift, their neural networks temporarily scrambled by the assault of structured nonsense. As the human Concordat fleet moved in to disable the incapacitated void ships, Chen turned to Sixtol with a grin. Sometimes the best weapon against a system that expects everything to make sense is to show it something that deliberately doesn't. The Supreme Commander's crystalline form shimmered with what Chen had learned to recognize as suppressed laughter. "I must admit, Captain, when you first suggested we could defeat an ancient cosmic threat with what you called weaponized nonsense, I had my doubts. But then again, that's what makes your species so remarkable. You don't just think outside the box. You question why the box exists in the first place." Speaking of boxes, Rodriguez called out from his station. "You might want to see this. We're picking up some unusual readings from the disabled void ships. It looks like, well, I'm not sure what it looks like, but it's definitely not their usual energy signature." Chen and Zixtal shared a look. They had won this battle with creativity and chaos, but something told them the Void Collective had more surprises in store. The question was, what happens when a force that feeds on patterns encounters a species that specializes in breaking them? As if in answer, the disabled void ships began to pulse with a new kind of energy, something that was neither light nor darkness, but something in between. The final battle was about to begin, and it would take everything both species had learned about each other to face what was coming. The strange energy pulsing from the disabled void ships cast an otherworldly glow throughout the command center. Captain Chen watched as the readings on their sensors fluctuated wildly, defying both human and concordat analysis. "It's like they're evolving," Lixtel observed, their crystalline form vibrating with nervous energy. "The chaos we introduced isn't corrupting their network anymore. It's becoming part of it." Rodriguez's fingers flew across his console. "They're incorporating our randomness into their own patterns. It's like they're learning to be unpredictable themselves." "Of course they are," Chen said quietly, a revelation dawning. "That's what they do, absorb and adapt. We didn't just confuse them. We taught them something new." The disabled void ships began to move again, but differently than before. Gone was their rigid swarm formation, replaced by fluid, unpredictable movements that seemed to draw inspiration from both human tactical randomness and concordat crystalline patterns. "Full defensive protocols," Zixtal ordered, but Chen raised her hand. "Wait," she said, studying the movements carefully. "This isn't an attack pattern. Look at the energy signatures. They are forming some kind of resonance." The void ships had arranged themselves in a formation that somehow managed to be both chaotic and symmetrical, their hulls now rippling with energy that combined their darkness with threads of crystalline light. From the center of their formation, a transmission began, not their usual void-dark communications, but something new. "It's a hybrid signal," Rodriguez reported with astonishment. "Part void energy, part crystalline resonance, with what appears to be are those cat memes encoded in the pattern." The message that emerged was unlike anything either species had encountered before. The Void Collective, it seemed, had been transformed by their encounter with chaos and creativity. They had evolved from simple energy consumers into something more complex, a civilization that understood the value of both pattern and randomness. "They want to talk," Chen realized, reading through the transmission. "Not to conquer or consume, but to learn. They've discovered something they never knew they were hungry for, the joy of unpredictability." The next few hours were perhaps the strangest first contact situation in galactic history. The Void Collective, it turned out, had originated as a highly ordered civilization that had become so rigid in their pursuit of perfection that they had lost something essential: the ability to evolve and grow. Their consumption of energy had been an unconscious attempt to fill that void, seeking variations and patterns they had engineered out of their own society. The human capacity for chaos and creativity, combined with the concordat's structured beauty, had shown them a different way. The very weapons used against them, the nonsense and randomness, had become the keys to their liberation. In the station's main observation dome, Chen stood with Zixtal, watching as void ships now danced with concordat vessels in space, their contrasting energies creating auroras of impossible beauty. "You know," Chen mused, "when I took this assignment, I thought first contact would be about managing conflicts between different species. I never expected it to be about helping civilizations rediscover parts of themselves they'd lost. Zixtal's crystalline form sparkled with gentle amusement, and I never expected that our salvation would come from embracing chaos rather than fighting it. The Concordat spent 10,000 cycles pursuing perfect order, only to find that a little disorder was exactly what the galaxy needed. Light's funny that way, Chen smiled. Sometimes the best way to create harmony is to add a few unexpected notes to the symphony. A group of young Concordat members floated past, their crystalline forms deliberately modified to create random rainbow refractions. They were accompanied by several void entities who had learned to shape their dark energy into what looked suspiciously like tap-dancing shadows. Nearby, Elder Vauxhall was engaged in what appeared to be a serious discussion with a void philosopher about the mathematical beauty of imperfection. "We're going to need to update a lot of protocols," Zixtal observed dryly. "Or maybe," Chen suggested, "write some new ones. Not about maintaining order, but about celebrating diversity, finding strength in our differences rather than trying to smooth them away." As if to emphasize her point, Rodriguez's latest experimental communication system chose that moment to malfunction, filling the station with a bizarre mix of earth jazz, crystalline harmonies, and void energy pulses. Instead of the panic such a disruption would have caused weeks ago, the various species in the dome began to move to the strange rhythm, creating an impromptu multi-species dance party. "You know what the best part is," Chen said, watching the joyful chaos with satisfaction. "This is just the beginning. There's a whole galaxy out there, full of civilizations waiting to learn that sometimes the best way to face the universe is with a sense of humor and a willingness to dance to whatever tune it plays." Zixtal's form chimed with laughter. "Perhaps that's the true lesson here. The universe isn't a problem to be solved or a pattern to be perfected. It's a dance to be enjoyed, even when we occasionally step on each other's toes." As the three civilizations celebrated together, their combined energies created patterns in space that had never been seen before. Perfect crystalline structures that somehow incorporated both void dark chaos and human spontaneity. It was beautiful, it was unpredictable, and it was exactly what the galaxy needed. The story of how humanity's first major galactic diplomatic crisis was resolved with memes, dad jokes, and disco balls would be told for generations to come. But more importantly, it would be laughed at, and that perhaps was the greatest victory of all.